Hello, everyone. Manlius here, and welcome to this unique episode of Hell is Us. And this episode, we'll be diving into the lore as given by Tania Alver. And these are articles that she has written, so I'll be reading them to you. Please feel free to listen along, playing this in the background as you study, or as you're gaming yourself, or maybe just to relax too. There's quite a bit that we go over, so feel free to skip forward and back, and we will be displaying the actual articles so you can read along as well if you would like. So let's get into it. Oh, so Tanya's finished her article about the conspiracy. Zeo Council, The Architects of Control, manuscript drafted by Tania Alver, January 1993. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned. No rumor is printed. No secret is revealed. John F. Kennedy, April 27th, 1961. Traditions, crafted by the Order of the Eye, were designed to suppress the cycle of violence that had plagued their people and keep the outside world oblivious to their secret. Still, time erodes even the most carefully laid foundations. The tensions between Palomas and Sabinians rose again, threatening to unravel the fragile peace. Meanwhile, the rest of the world was modernizing, industrializing, globalizing, and inevitably turning its gaze towards the enigmatic nation. The scholars of the Order of the Eye had maintained Hadea's secrecy for centuries, but as technology, warfare, and communication advanced, they realized they could no longer keep the world out. Instead, they would have to bring someone in. The opening of Pandora's box. The scholars sought an ally within the organized nations, the world's emergency diplomatic superstructure. They found their candidate in Caleb Cyprus, a respected Owen mediator with deep connections to global powers. He had no allegiances, no extreme ideologies, just a sharp mind and a well-earned reputation for discretion. Caleb saw their invitation as an unprecedented opportunity. A member state with no embassies, no trade agreements, and virtually no foreign presence was extending its hand, but what he would find beneath Hadea's surface was beyond anything he could have imagined. The scholars brought him deep underground. They showed him centuries of hidden knowledge, records of forgotten wars, ancient weapons infused with unknown energies, and most horrifying, the preserved remains of hollow walkers. He listened as the scholars spoke of time loops and the horrors of the past calamities. Caleb left Hadea a changed man, his mind reeling from the weight of this secret. The scholars had hoped he would take their plight to the UN, securing scientific expertise and funding. Instead, Caleb reported everything to his true masters. For years, Caleb Cyprus had served the interest of three of the most powerful families in the world, Frank Vanderlyn, Henry D. Ward, and Charles Dagan. These men, controlling global finance, oil, and weaponry, had orchestrated world events from the shadows for decades. Now, Caleb had handed them something beyond wealth or power. He had given them the key to unlocking forces older than human history. The men behind the curtain. By July 1946, the three men arrived in Hadea. Frank Vanderlyn was the heir to a dynasty of central banking titans, rumored to have orchestrated global financial crises for profit. Henry D. Ward, CEO of Prime Oil, wielded control over nearly half the world's fuel infrastructure. Charles Dagan, owner of Dagan Industries, had profited from both world wars and played a direct role in the Manhattan Project. They met with the scholars on Hyde Island, deep within Hadea's redistricted Lake Kiln. The Order of the Eye revealed everything, hoping these men would secure the future. Instead, the three saw an opportunity to reshape the world. The Zeal Council, an elite syndicate of industry titans, would work alongside the scholars. But while the Order of the Eye sought to contain the calamity, the Zeal Council had far grander ambitions. They saw the Eye as an experiment. What the scholars considered a curse, the Zeal Council saw as a potential source of power, energy, and weapons. Thus, Operation Moloch was born, a decades-long project designed to provoke controlled calamity and study its effects. The Order of the Eye was left dark. The Axiom, the gears of Operation Moloch. In 1948, the Zeal Council established the Axiom, a vast and secretive organization divided into four major divisions. Cerebrum, led by Edwin Pearson, focuses on scientific research, biology, chemistry, physics, and energy studies related to the Eye of God and the time loops. General Emerson oversees Manus, the military arm overseeing logistics and security, and the elite OMSIF, soldier trained to encounter limbic entities. Oculus, headed by Joseph Donovan, is the intelligence division responsible for espionage, surveillance, and information control inside and outside of Hadea. Astis, operated by William Fleming, specializes in propaganda and psychological warfare. It is tasked with manipulating Hadea's political landscape and controlling the media. Each division worked independently without knowing the greater plan, ensuring no single group had all the pieces. Only the Zeal Council knew the full scope of Operation Moloch. Operation Moloch, the grand design. According to files retrieved from the Zeal server, the blueprint for Operation Moloch was meticulous and spanning decades. Every phase was calculated, orchestrated, and most disturbingly executed with unwavering precision. The phases that have already passed are terrifying in their implications. The phases yet to unfold, even worse. Phase 1, the hermit state. The first step in the plan was absolute isolation. A changing government was essential, one that could single-handedly control the people and seal the country off from outside interference. The Order of the Eye and the Zeal Council sought a leader who could do just that. The making of a tyrant. Geryon Yankel was an enigma. To the Palamist, he was a humble man of modest background. To the Sabinians, he was an intellectual and reformer. To the Order of the Eye and the Zeal Council, he was a useful puppet. A former head of palace security, Yankel was already accustomed to quelling unrest with an iron fist. More importantly, he had no deep loyalty to either ethnic group. He was the perfect blank slate. The Zeal Council's propaganda arm, Astis, worked tirelessly to shape Yankel's image. They carefully molded public sentiment and nudged the people toward political change through bribes, coercion, and propaganda. By 1952, the stage was set. The staged coup. Under cover of darkness, Yankel's forces stormed the royal palace. The royal guard never stood a chance. When the smoke cleared, the monarchs and their family were dead. The next day, Yankel stood before the people and declared himself the Republic of Hadea's president. The transition was anything but smooth. Protests erupted. Resistance factions formed. The country teetered on the brink of chaos. It was precisely what the Zeal Council wanted, sealing the borders. Between June and December 1953, the new government passed sweeping laws, censorship. Every newspaper required government approval before publication. Travel restrictions, passports were revoked. Leaving or entering the country now required presidential authorization. Surveillance and policing. The civilian police were transformed into a military branch. New tattletale programs rewarded citizens for turning in potential dissenters. Then came the physical barriers. By March 1954, construction began along Hadea's borders. Walls, razor wire fences, checkpoints, watchtowers, and minefields surrounded the nation like a vice grip. Millions of darns, Hadean currency, were poured into military expansion. The national army swelled. Military service became mandatory. Desertion became punishable by death. By August 1957, the operation was complete. Hadea was officially a hermit state. Phase 2, the powder keg. With the country locked down, it was time to prime it for destruction. The Zeal Council believed that the population wasn't divided enough. To ensure maximum tension when the time came, they needed a more even distribution of Palamists and Sabinians across all provinces. In 1959, Gurion Yankel addressed the nation, announcing his grand vision of unification. A relocation program was established, overseen by Axiom agents. Incentives were offered to encourage migration. Later, lotteries were introduced, forcibly relocating citizens to new regions. The changes planted the seeds of resentment. The old wounds of ethnic strife deepened. In 1960, the Carnival and Week of Peace were celebrated. Haitians had no idea they were celebrating for the last time. Behind the scenes, the Axiom meticulously studied the limbic invasions. They had one goal: to master the cycle. Their Omsif soldiers trained relentlessly, preparing for the calamity. By 1981, the Zeal Council decided the country was ripe for chaos. It was time to light the fuse. Phase 3. Lighting the fuse. With tensions bubbling just beneath the surface, the Zeal Council prepared their next move: the assassination of Gurion Yankel. On June 26, 1982, Gurion Yankel was found dead at his private resort on Lake Sinan. The official cause was suicide. Unofficially, an Oculus hit squad made sure he never saw it coming. The nation spiraled into uncertainty. The Grand Coalition. With the dictator gone, Haiti's 4 provinces gained autonomy, forming a fragile coalition government under the Zeal Council's watchful eye. But this was merely a waiting game. Between 1982 and 1990, the Axiom pulled every string imaginable to keep Haiti on course. They manipulated the media, which was entirely under Zeal Council control. Hate speech, historical grievances, and propaganda ran rampant. The new government and its parliament were continuously sabotaged by blocking political agreements between the provinces. As parliament stagnated, so did the public's trust. Journalists, activists, and moderates were silenced through intimidation and, in some cases, assassinations. The sparks that lit the fuse. In March 1990, Fenice Bazima, Umbrehan's governor, delivered an incendiary speech, demanding the return of the Illigad Valley. Riots broke out in Yeovil, orchestrated by Axiom agent provocateurs. In April 1990, a bomb detonated in the Mariston market. Dozens died. The Palamist nationalists were blamed, igniting waves of violence. Tensions reached their breaking point. By March 1991, Argala and Umbrehan had invaded Jehania. Asteria retaliated. The Haitian Civil War had begun. For 2 years, both sides committed unspeakable war crimes, while Haitians watched in horror. The Zeal Council prepared for the real experiment, which is Phase 4, Sacrificial Lamb. The war provided the perfect cover for the Zeal Council's desire for unrestricted access to the 6th Calamity. In December 1992, Omsif soldiers and Cerebrum scientists were deployed across Hadea to collect and secure the experiment. Haiti was never meant to be saved. The Zeal Council's true goal was a controlled limbic invasion, to study it, harness its power, and exploit its potential unburdened by the moral qualms of the Order of the Eye. The millions of Haitians caught in the chaos? Nothing more than collateral damage. And the worst is yet to come. The last and final stage of Operation Moloch, called Immolation, has not yet come to pass. I can only conclude that the Zeal Council intends to eliminate all the evidence and witnesses. I dare not want to know how they plan to execute this last phase, the unleashed chaos. After roaming in Haiti with my partner, we've noticed that the Omsif and Science outposts are in shambles. Did the Zeal Council not foresee the calamity's scale and magnitude? The creatures were unpredictable, more than anticipated. The time loops expanded beyond control? Everything I have read on the Zeal server shows repeatedly that the Zeal Council and its Axiom were prepared. What happened? Haiti is no longer an experiment. It is a catastrophe, a crime against humanity. I'm confident that the Zeal Council feels fear for the first time.
I wrote a piece on several of the past calamities.
The Calamities of Hadea. Manuscript draft by Tania Alver, January 1993. The limbic invasions, known as the Calamities by the general population, began by attempting to stop the religious wars that had almost wiped out Haitian society. The scholars of the Order of the Eye created the eminent shroud device capable of augmenting the Eye of God's emotional dampening effect to reach the entirety of Hadea. It was a success. However, in doing so, the scholars had inadvertently created their hell, cursing Haitians in a cycle of calamities that would span generations. The second calamity, the man who would be king, Lord Astor's ambition ignites war and betrayal. After the first calamity, silence fell over Hadea. The invaders had been destroyed, along with the brutal religious wars. The land was finally healing. In 734, an oligarchy was formed under the watchful gaze of the Order of the Eye. After heated debates in Lublina, power was evenly distributed among four noble houses: two from the Palamist traditionalist, House Argau and House Umbra, and two from the Sabinian reformists, House Astor and House Jahan. Haiti was divided into four provinces: Argala, Umbrahen, Asteria, and Jehania. The Lublina alliance kept the peace for years, allowing the people to prosper. But one man had grander ambitions: the rise of Lord Astor. House Astor had no interest in the alliance. Lord Astor envisioned himself as Haitia's sole ruler. Working secretly, he strengthened his military, secured his economy, and built alliances. His biggest obstacle was House Jahan, which refused to break from the alliance. Without their support, his conquest seemed impossible. Lord Astor appeared to accept the oligarchy, even arranging a marriage between his daughter, Fenello, and Lord Jahan's son, Van. The wedding was set in Jelgin, a quiet town near Argala's border. But on the day of the ceremony, Lord Astor disguised his men as Argalan soldiers. They raided the church, massacring the guests. Though Fenello miraculously survived, Van was not so fortunate. Old hatreds reignited. Lord Jahan, consumed by grief, had no doubts. Blaming House Argau, Lord Astor had what he wanted: a war he couldn't lose. The Second Reformist War. Despite House Argau's pleas of innocence, Lord Jahan declared war. House Jahan and House Astor launched a relentless campaign, committing horrific war crimes and demanding Lord Argau's execution. Meanwhile, House Umbra remained neutral, ignoring Argau's cries for aid. As the reformists tore through Argala, the Order of the Eye scrambled to stop the bloodshed. Too late. They had failed to recognize Lord Astor for what he was: a warmonger. Their worst fears came true. The Eye of God activated. The second calamity had begun. Argala burns. By the time the reformists had nearly forced Argala into surrender, their brutality surpassed even the horrors of the old religious wars. House Jahan's soldiers showed no mercy, claiming vengeance for Van. Then, time loops appeared, trapping moments of extreme violence. Soon after, the creatures emerged, attacking everything in sight. Lord Astor was furious. Argala was on the verge of surrender, and now these monsters had ruined his plans to invade Umbrahan. Yet his pride and thirst for the throne blinded him. He ordered Lord Jahan to continue the campaign, despite the chaos. Lord Jahan, obsessed with revenge, obeyed. But Lord Umbra, watching the carnage unfold, could stand by no longer. He surrendered to Lord Astor, ending the war and crowning him king of Hadea. The Lublina alliance was gone. The noble houses swore fealty to House Astor, uniting under one banner. Armed with limbic weapons, Hadea's warriors systemically destroyed the creatures. Behind the scenes, the Order of the Eye worked tirelessly to close the time loops. The second calamity was stopped. Now, all eyes turned to the new king. Disturbing rumors. Rumors spread quickly. King Astor, it was said, was attempting to weaponize the creatures. Concerned, the Order of the Eye dispatched spies. Every trail led to a dead end. Any captured informants died before revealing secrets, even under torture. All paths led to whispers of a place known as the Auriga Museum. But its location and true nature remained a mystery. With no other choice, the Order of the Eye ordered King Astor's assassination. Like a serpent without a head, his kingdom crumbled. Once again, Hadea needed to heal. The Lublina alliance was revived, and the oligarchy was restored. The third calamity, love conquers all, even death. The reign of Lady Margaret ends in tragedy. A fragile peace. Following House Astor's downfall, Hadea's noble houses signed a new treaty, forming the Second Lublina Alliance. Peace, however, remained tenuous. The Order of the Eye, wary of history's brutal cycles, sought to prevent another disaster. The scholars theorized that violence triggered the emergence of time loops, the strange phenomena responsible for past calamities. Determined to suppress conflict, the Order placed spies in every noble house, urging leaders to renounce violence as a mortal sin. Few embraced the doctrine. more fervently than Lady Margaret of House Argyll, a woman whose devotion to peace and to her god Cytheris would ultimately lead to catastrophe. The mother of Argalla. Lady Margaret, revered as the mother of Argalla, ruled without personal ambition beyond maintaining peace. Unable to bear children, she saw her subjects as her own, her love for them unwavering but increasingly obsessive. Her reign was defined by two policies, defense and religious decree. She would ensure her people survived the next calamity, no matter the cost. Fortress beneath the earth. Determined to protect Argalla, Lady Margaret diverted the treasury toward massive defensive projects. Walls enclosed every city, town, and village, but fortifications were insufficient. She commissioned an extensive network of underground shelters, calling upon miners and sappers to carve tunnels underneath Hadea. The greatest of these was the Umul Caves, a sprawling subterranean city near Trisk, capable of sheltering thousands, complete with schools, storage chambers, refectories, and chapels. The caves were stocked with harvest surpluses and designed to seal off completely in times of crises. Argalla was prepared for war, but Lady Margaret believed faith would be an even greater shield. Overbearing vigilance. Under Lady Margaret's decree, violence became the greatest sin. All crimes of violence, no matter how severe or trivial, were punished equally. Even minor altercations resulted in imprisonment or execution. The Slozania Watch, secretive watchmen, patrolled Argalla, spying on citizens and arresting those deemed at risk of causing violence. Neighbors informed on one another. Fear spread like a disease. Argalla became a province of silence, paranoia. The rest of Hadea followed Lady Margaret's example, but the reformist provinces were more measured. Crimes were punished proportionally, and no citizen was encouraged to spy on their peers. The revolt. Years passed. Argalla darkened. The people, trapped in fear and austerity, reached a breaking point. In secret, a rebellion formed. Nobles, commoners, and peasants alike, meeting within the very underground shelters meant to protect them. Their anger had festered too long. When the revolt erupted, it did so with merciless force. The rebels stormed Trisk, their fury unchained. The streets ran red in what would be remembered as the Trisk Massacre. The city fell swiftly, but within its walls stood Dalglov Fortress, where Lady Margaret and her loyalists held their ground. A siege began. From atop the ramparts, Lady Margaret watched in horror. Her beloved people, her children, were butchering one another. Overcome with grief, she whispered, "Love conquers all, even death." Then, before anyone could stop her, she took a dagger and slit her own throat. A time loop formed around her, trapping her in an endless cycle of self-destruction, replaying her final, tragic moment for eternity. Creatures abound. The Order of the Eye, desperate to prevent disaster, had no time to act. The Eye of God had opened. The third calamity had begun. Time loops spread across Argalla, opening in the streets of Trisk. The nightmarish creatures emerged, indiscriminately attacking both rebels and loyalists alike. House Umbra responded first, mobilizing its forces against the chaos. Armed with limbic weapons, the warriors pushed back the monstrous invaders. The Argallan military secured Dalglov Fortress, aided by mysterious fighters, as scholars proto-martyrs worked frantically to close the time loops. The battles raged, slowly, at significant cost. House Umbra and the surviving Argallan forces eradicated the creatures. The calamity was over. A costly victory. Trisk lay in ruins. Argalla had lost its mother. The woman who sought to shield her people from suffering had instead drowned them in it. The scholars, burdened by yet another failure, were left to pick up the pieces. Once again, Hadea would need to heal. Fourth calamity. The betrayer. Hadea's darkest hour unfolds as a heretic's machinations ignite catastrophe. A kingdom united and fractured. Despite the scars of past calamities, Hadea thrived under King Marcus. The monarchy, established through the decree of holy symmetry, sought to unify the once divided Sabinian reformist and Palomist traditionalist. Under its terms, each ruling monarch would sever ties to their noble houses, and their heir would be required to marry someone of the opposite faith. Hope flourished as Marcus Slab of House Umbra ascended to the throne alongside Queen Viga Filer of House Aster. The Loblina alliance was dissolved, replaced by a kingdom where noble lands became duchies and baronies. Both churches secured positions in court, ensuring religious balance. For a time, it seemed the new order would hold, but one man, raised in the shadow of war, would see it undone. The prodigy turned heretic. Born between the second and third calamities, Francis Aldrich was raised in a strict Palomas household where discipline bordered on cruelty. His parents forced him to kneel before the eye of Cethyrus for hours, sometimes days. The symbol loomed in every room, its omnipresent gaze haunting his childhood. Surviving the third calamity, Francis concluded that the creatures were inevitable, a punishment for humanity's weakness. Resistance, he believed, was futile. Despite his upbringing, Francis excelled in academia, earning a place in a prestigious school secretly operated by the Order of the Eye. His intellect was unmatched, but so was his arrogance. Though the scholars recognized his potential, his hubris kept him from fully entering their ranks. The Order never trusted him with their most sacred knowledge. Their mission was to stop the calamities. Suspecting he would soon be cast out, Francis broke into the Forbidden Library. He had barely time to turn a page before the full guard seized him, but in those few moments, he ripped out and concealed several pages containing secrets of the time loops and the predicted date of the next calamity. Expelled and disgraced, Francis wandered the forests of Umberhan, alone with his stolen knowledge. It was there, in the depths of solitude, that he claimed to hear the voice of Tear. The rise of the servants of Tear. Hallucinogenic visions led Francis to a revelation. Tear, the two-headed serpent, was the true god of humanity. Cethyrus, he preached, had long abandoned them. The time had come to embrace raw passion, to surrender to desires long suppressed by Palomist and reformist doctrine. At first, he was dismissed as a lunatic. Villages drove him away, priests condemned him, and crowds jeered. But he remained steadfast. Tear was merely testing his faith. Slowly, the outcasts came to him. The disgrace, the rejected, the humiliated, those persecuted by the Palomas Church. They found solace in his words. Soon, the servants of Tear were born. Their doctrine, a direct affront to the Palomas Church, spread like wildfire. Alarmed, the church formed the Inquisition of Palom, led by Grand Inquisitor Damien, tasked with wiping out the cult. The Inquisition swept through Umberhan, unleashing mock trials, burnings, and brutal purges. The servants of Tear fled eastward, seeking refuge in reformist lands. Queen Viga's defiance. Unlike the Palomas, the Sabinian reformists tolerated the servants of Tear. In an act of goodwill, Queen Viga allowed them to settle in Jehania, donating land to build their first shrine, the Sacrament of the Fallen. The decision infuriated the Palomas Church and King Marcus, who saw it as treachery. "You failed to consult me when you created your Inquisition," Queen Viga retorted. Tensions at court escalated. Meanwhile, in the Plains of Mist, the servants of Tear isolated themselves behind walls, accepting only traders through a single river checkpoint. Locals grew uneasy. Rumors swirled. Disappearing travelers, unnatural sounds, strange lights at night. The queen's advisors urged her to investigate. She sent her most trusted diplomat, Lady Sophia Morton, to parley with Francis. It was a journey that ended in horror. The betrayer's trap. Sophia never returned. Instead, a single survivor limped back to court, carrying her severed head in a basket. Enraged, Queen Viga ordered an invasion. The Jehanian army, reinforced by the Palomas Inquisition, laid siege to the Sacrament of the Fallen. For weeks, the cultists held the walls with fanatical resolve. Then, without warning, they abandoned their defenses. The army stormed the compound, expecting a final battle. Instead, they found eerie silence. Francis sat on his makeshift throne, serene, smiling. His followers knelt in circles, whispering prayers and singing hymns. Soldiers hesitated, then raised their swords. The cultists grinned and slit their own throats. A time loop ignited. Francis had timed everything perfectly. Another calamity had erupted. The Jehanian army and Palomas inquisitors fled, scrambling to contain the horrific creatures emerging all around them. But the real horror lay elsewhere. Francis had sent cultists across Hadea to sacrifice themselves simultaneously. Time loops opened across the kingdom. Cities, villages, and the armies of Hadea found themselves battling monsters on every front. The aftermath. After significant losses, the combined forces of Hadea quelled the fourth calamity, but at an unimaginable cost. Francis, captured alive, was sentenced to a decade of torture before finally dying in his cell. His followers were hunted, his Gospel of Teilhard seized by the Inquisition, and his diaries detailing his theories on time loops were archived by the scholars. The betrayer was no more. His legacy scarred Hadea and wounded the scholars, wounds that would never truly close. The fourth calamity had come and gone. The Order of the Eye would never be the same. The fifth calamity, the Blood Queen. The deadliest calamity in Hadea's history did not begin with the creatures, but with ambition, betrayal, and vengeance. Non-interference. The fourth calamity left the Order of the Eye divided. Internal disputes raged over their role in political affairs, but the scholars ultimately agreed. Their interference had failed. Manipulating kings, swaying the clergy, and orchestrating assassinations had proven too volatile, too costly. Instead, they withdrew. Most of their spy network was dismantled, save for a few well-placed informants tasked with observing, not intervening. If another war arose, the scholars would let it burn Hadea to the ground. From its ashes, they would rebuild a better world. Long memories. The wounds of war do not heal overnight. In Argala and Umberhan, reformist communities became scapegoats, isolated and targeted. They suffered frequent attacks, while Palomist traditionalists, bitter from years of reformist rule, fed the flames of resentment. The high priest of the reformists and the arch-cleric of the Palomists bickered, accusing each other of fueling the unrest. But the conflict escalated when Queen Viga announced she was expecting an heir. Under the decree of holy symmetry, the next king would be a Sabinian reformist, as the monarchy required alternating faiths. This did not sit well with the Palomist Church, which had recently elected hardline traditionalists to its leadership. They would not sit idly by while another reformist ruled Hadea, the boy king. Years later, King Marcus passed peacefully in his sleep, leaving behind a stable but fragile kingdom. His son Garland ascended the throne. Raised as a Sabinian reformist, Garland was gentle, kind, and forgiving, but lacked the discipline and confidence to lead. His mother, Queen Viga, worried for his future, but she passed before she could see him wed. Alone and vulnerable, Garland turned to his Palomist advisors for guidance. They seized the opportunity. They handpicked his queen. The veteran's pupil. Lady Harver Rivetta of Argala was not a typical noblewoman. Raised by her uncle, Thomas Rivetta, a veteran of the Fourth Calamity, she was trained as a warrior rather than a lady. Thomas had survived the butchery of the Fallen, one of the bloodiest battles of the Fourth Calamity, and emerged as a hardened Palomist traditionalist. Thomas raised Harver as he would have a son, ensuring she knew how to fight, lead, and survive. Harver was beautiful, but battle-worn, often seen covered in dust, smelling of horse and sweat. The Palomist clergy saw her as the perfect candidate. They whispered into her pious heart, convincing her that Setherus chose her to restore Hadea to Palomist rule. By the time she married King Garland, the coup was already underway. Seeds of hatred. The reconstruction of Argala had left the kingdom financially strained. The late Queen Viga had halted funding, fearing an economic collapse. Her decision left Argala in poverty. As hardship spread, Palomist traditionalists blamed the reformists for their suffering. Hate-filled sermons, nationalist rhetoric, and conspiracies flourished. The Palomists took action. Queen Harver redirected funds to Argala, not for rebuilding, but for strengthening its military. She also funded the construction of her death camps and towers all over Hadea, including the most notorious one, the Arcus Spire. Her uncle, Thomas Rivetta, was named Supreme Commander of Hadea's forces. Conscription orders were passed, and Argala and Umberhan began raising an unstoppable army. Meanwhile, reformist communities in Palomist territories suffered segregation, arrests, and attacks. The Order of the Eye watched and did nothing. The Night of the Sharp Daggers. The coup d'etat was swift, brutal, and absolute. Under cover of darkness, Palomist forces stormed the capital, assassinating every reformist noble and high priest in their sleep. By dawn, King Garland, broken and alone, renounced his Sabinian faith. In Palomist-held lands, reformists were arrested, rounded up and sent to death camps. The Sabinian genocide had begun. Two massive Palomist armies marched into reformist territory. Jehania fell first, its people unprepared for war. Reformist priests were beaten, burned, and crucified. Asteria resisted. Its warriors had survived the Fourth Calamity. Though outnumbered, they inflicted devastating losses on the Palomist forces. Still, It was only a matter of time. The Palomas army united into one unstoppable force, pushing the reformists into their last stronghold, Lausalus, the capital of Asteria. The last stand. The siege began. Inside the gates, the Sabinian reformists knew their fate. Rumors of mass executions and extermination camps had reached their ears. They made one final decision. They would die fighting. At dawn, the city gates burst open. Starved, desperate, filled with hatred, every soldier, every citizen of Lausalus charged the Palamist army in one last stand. The bloodshed was unimaginable, savagery beyond reason. Then, the Eye of God opened. Time loops appeared throughout the battlefield, trapping the slaughtered in endless repetition, fueling a flood of monstrous creatures. The Palamist army collapsed. In the rest of Hadea, inside the mass execution camps, time loops opened as civilians were being slaughtered. For the 5th time, Calamity had struck in Hadea. Tabula rasa. The scholars were ready. The full guard was unleashed. Time loops were shut down. King Garland and Queen Harver were assassinated. Though Queen Harver's name was erased from history, her legacy drenched in blood remains. Only her arcus spire still stands today, sealed shut as a reminder of the dangers of unchecked passions. In whispers and secret circles, Palamists and Reformists still remembered. And Hadea never forgets. The war was over. Hundreds of thousands were dead. The monarchy was shattered. And for the first time, the Order of the Eye took direct control. A puppet monarchy was installed, ruled by scholars disguised as kings and queens. A new holiday, the Carnival and the Week of Peace, was established to reshape cultural memory and ensure control. For over 1,000 years, the calamities ceased. The scholars believed that they had won. They were wrong. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed that lore dump. And we're going to end the episode there. And when we continue, we shall carry on with the game. In any case, I appreciate you stopping by, and we'll see you next time.